you seen or been in a car crash recently? Is your social media feed filled with actions in your community? The pedestrians show our little rock here with the message call to action. At this very moment, you have the opportunity to call out the dangers you face in your everyday transportation experience. Visit centralarsafestreets.com and fill out the survey to tell your story. Again, that's centralarsafestreets.com. Thank you.
Season's greetings. This is R. Roosevelt Williams III, candidate for State Representative of Arkansas's 80th House District. I'm reaching out to remind you to check your voter registration with the county clerk and to keep up with our race at www.movesforarkansas.com. Until next time, love and appreciate your friends and family, and be kind to your neighbors this holiday season. Sincerely, Roosevelt.
Paid for by Williams for Arkansas.
Times are late, run down the moon, and I thank God I appreciate it. And I pray take me soon, cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know something will hold around because all my time I'm waiting for, I'm praying for the people to say that we don't wanna fight no more, there be no more. And the children will say one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. Stars about sweet love, we are lose, but now we know the souls of weakness and blood fresh life. Keep on moving through the ones that still raise. And if these flames you might lose your way, go away, my trying ways you don't let it get away. Go away. Sometimes in my tears I drown, I never let it get me down. So negativity surround, I know something is all that around. I've been waiting for, I've been fighting for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more, there'll be no more war, and the children will say one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. One day I will change to be not the same. Stop with the violence, down with the game. One day I'll be free, and I'll still be under the same seas of the rain. Why
Yes, that's Bob Marley bringing us in with One Day. We'll be talking about that a little later on this show, Community Voices, where you are live right here at KABF 88.3 FM, where we are the voice of the people. Thank you so much for stopping right here from 9 to 10 o'clock every Tuesday morning. For those of you who are new, welcome to the Tuesday morning show from 9 to 10 right here at KABF 88.3 FM. We are excited for the show. We are excited for your presence. We are grateful for your presence because we realize and we recognize that we would not be here were it not for you. We are one of 12 100,000 watt local radio stations in the United States, and we are streaming globally. So we are grateful that you allow us to be here. We cannot wait to see how this conversation unfolds. I see you already, Keith Harper. Sawubona to you. Sawubona to all of you in the spirit of oneness. Sawubona is an invitation that reminds us that we are one. So in the spirit of oneness that binds us together because of our humanity, we want to have this conversation with you. But before I get too far into this, let me pause for just a moment so that you can be greeted by your co-host, the pastor, Toney Orr.
Good morning. Hope everybody's having a great Tuesday morning so far. Hope everybody had a great Christmas. However you celebrate Christmas, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had fun. And I hope you just really had a good time. Just want to say thank you once again to all we're still getting donations and pledges in. So I'm just thank you and grateful for that. And when I heard that bar, Molly, it just took me back to times that I've spent in the islands, especially in Jamaica, and it reminded me of he has a movie coming out in February called One Love, and I can't wait to see that. He was truly a revolutionary in his music, so I'm looking forward to the show this morning also.
So for those of you who are like me and you do not celebrate Christmas, but you are ready for Kwanzaa, today is the first day of Kwanzaa. And the question is, Habari Gani? That's the Swahili term for what's the news? And the answer is always whatever day it is. So today is Tuesday, the 26th. And Habari Gani is the question, and the answer is Umoja for unity. For those of you who are looking for a place to begin your Kwanzaa celebration, you can find it at Pyramid Art Books and Custom Framing at 1001 Wright Avenue, Suite C, right here in the city of Little Rock in the state of Arkansas, 72206. For more information, you can call 501-372-5824, 501-372-5824. Habari Gani is the question, and Umoja is the answer for unity. And that starts at 12 o'clock today. Actually, at noon every day until Monday the 1st, you can go and celebrate Kwanzaa. So tomorrow, Wednesday, for self-determination, that will be happening at Better Community Development at 3604 West 12th Street. On Thursday, Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility, that happens at Norris Furniture, 3900 John Barrow Road. On Friday, Ujama, which is cooperative economics, happens at the Brandon House Cultural and Performing Arts Center at 12120 Colonel Glenn Road. On Saturday, NIA for Purpose, that's 801 Event Venue. The 801 Event Venue, which is happening right here, it's located right here on Chester Street, South Chester Street. Then on Sunday, for Creativity, Kumba, you've got the House of Art at 108 East 4th Street in North Little Rock. And then finally on Monday, the 1st of January, Imani, which is Faith, is happening at Aphrodisia Studio of Performing Arts at 9700 North Rodney Parham Road. And all of these are happening at noon, except for Sunday and Monday. They happen at 2 o'clock p.m. If you want more information, just hit us up right here at 501-372-6119, or you can directly contact me at 228-236-7440, 228-236-7440. We want you to know where you can get your Kwanzaa celebration on throughout the rest of this week. Also want to get, Toney, do you have any announcements?
No announcement.
Okay. So I also want to make sure that we get our tidbit, our EJI tidbit for today. Today is actually the 26th, but I don't want to read the 26th because I know so many of you were celebrating Christmas, so many of you that do that. And I just thought it was interesting to see what was happening as it relates to racial injustice in this world on Christmas Day, for those of you who celebrate that in 1956 on December 25th, civil rights leader, the Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, survives the bombing of his Birmingham, Alabama home by the Ku Klux Klan, the first of 5 attempts on his life over the next 7 years. Again, on Christmas Day, December 25th in 1956, the civil rights leader, the Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, survives the bombing of his Birmingham, Alabama home by the Ku Klux Klan, the first of 5 attempts on his life over the next 7 years. So I want to make sure that we put that tidbit out there. Oh, and for those of you who are looking for a calendar, I do have a couple of calendars. I will leave them up here in the office. For those of you who are interested in the 2024 calendar, I already have just a couple of them that are free. You can just come up here and get them whenever you are able in your normal rhythm of life, so that we can continue to be reminded, especially on these days where we are celebrating one thing, which really turns out to be a distraction from whatever else is happening, especially in the lives of Black folks, which we center in this space. I see you, Mayor Lisa Hicks Gilbert. Woo, woo, from Elaine. Good morning, good people, is what she says. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. So I want to make sure that you are aware of the tidbit, that you have the announcements about Kwanzaa, and then we can get into this conversation about Elijah McClain. It was in August 2019 when a 23-year-old Black man named Elijah McClain was walking down the street on his way home. Kind of reminds me of Trayvon Martin, who was walking in his own neighborhood on his way home from the convenience store. But Elijah McClain, 23 years old, was walking home, and he was stopped by the police. And you can hear in the video, I thought about playing the video, but then I wrestled with that because I don't think that it is healthy for us to always listen to these kinds of abusive, traumatic atrocities that happen to Black bodies on a loop. When someone dies, we've gotten to the point now, especially with social media, especially with just the regular media, that we will watch this all day long. We'll watch what's happening, the degradation of Black bodies. We watch it all day long. I don't think that that's healthy. And so I decided against playing the video. But you can hear Elijah McClain, who is simply walking home, and he's accosted by these police officers. And he says to them, you know, I'm an introvert, and what I really need you to do right now is respect my boundaries. Like, you're all up in my space, you're all up in my face, and all I'm trying to do is walk home. He doesn't say all of that. All he says is, hey, I'm an introvert, and I'd like for you to respect the boundaries that I'm speaking. And the cop says, one of the police officers says, hey, I'm stopping you because you look suspicious. I'm like, how you look suspicious just walking home? Well, actually what happened was someone called the police and said, hey, there's this person walking down the street, and they look suspicious. And so the police assumed that it was Elijah McClain, who looked suspicious because they said he had on a ski mask, but actually what he had on is one of those, I have one myself, where it's when it's really cold outside, you can put it over your head and it covers your entire face, but it keeps your eyes open so that you can be as warm as possible. I have one that I bought from Target. And so here he is wearing the same kind of warmer for his face. And the cop said that he looks suspicious. And so in as he is having this interaction with the police officers, they are saying to him, they begin to touch his body. They begin to put their hands, more than one of them. It's at least 3 from the video that I see. I believe it's 5 of them, but all I can see is 3 on the video. And all of them are touching him, trying to get him to stop. And they're telling him, stop tensing up. And I'm thinking to myself, if strangers begin to touch my body without my permission while I'm just walking home, what do you think my body is going to do as a normal reaction? It's not going to be something that I'm telling my body to do. My body is automatically, involuntarily going to begin to tense up because my body is going to try to protect me in whatever way that it can. And so they begin to touch his body, and he tenses up, and they say, stop tensing up, stop tensing up. And then finally he ends up in a chokehold. He's in the chokehold, and he loses consciousness. The paramedics are called. The paramedics come, and they administer this drug called ketamine. Some people call it ketamine. Some people call it ketamine. Some people actually call it ketamine. Whatever you want to call it, it's fine with me. Ketamine is the way that I understand it. And so they administer this drug. The purpose of this drug is actually usually used for veterinarians. They use it more than anybody else to sedate their animals. But this one is used, and it can be used on people. They give him an injection for the ketamine so that he can lose control. That's the purpose. The purpose is so that he will no longer have control over his body, so that he will no longer protest the abuse that's happening to his body, so the cops, the police officers, can do whatever it is that they want to do to him. And so as a result, they say, as a result of this injection, he dies 3 days later in the hospital. And so this has gone to, there were 2 million people who signed a petition to say, hey, we need to have someone look into this unlawful death, this unjust death of this young Black man who was simply walking home. And they do that. They have an investigation, and it turns out that none of the police officers are charged with the crime for killing this Black man. Instead, they have indicted the paramedics. They have found the paramedics guilty because they administered the ketamine. And so I just found that to be absolutely fascinating, that the only reason that the paramedics showed up is because the young man lost consciousness after Elijah McClain was put into a chokehold, which we now know is supposed to be illegal. He's put into the chokehold by the officers, but the officers are not held in any kind, like they're not charged with anything but the paramedics who are trying to deal with him, because ketamine is actually, when they begin to use it, it's because they feel like the person is being aggressive. We need you to calm down. We need you to lose control because you are being aggressive. You are out of control. You are doing things. We need you to just stop. And so the only reason that Elijah McClain his body is responding is because of what the officers have done to him. And so for them to now say that the officers are completely innocent in this whole thing, but we're going to charge the paramedics, I find that to be fascinating. And that's what I want to have a conversation about, is how we are about systemic racism. Because a lot of times when we say systemic, a lot of people do not understand what we mean by systemic. We mean that there are systems that are working together to perpetuate racism in our world. There are systems like the system of law enforcement in this case, as well as the system of healthcare in this case, the system of government in this case, because it took 2 million signatures before the governor of Colorado would even declare that this was something that they wanted to look into. So you've got all of these systems that work together, hand in hand, in tandem, to make these abuses possible, particularly around the Black body, which is what we're talking about in this case with Elijah McClain. And so systemic racism is an issue, and it's on the table today for discussion. And I want to talk about it, but I know that I've been talking for a minute, so let me see if Toney has anything to interject.
Just listening to it, and I have seen the video of Elijah McClain and his interaction with the police officers. And the one thing that I thought about as it was being explained, as you explained it, Denise, is how the police officers weren't held culpable, because even now they have laws that says that if someone comes and buys drugs from you and then go and die, that you're still responsible. So when you talk about the criminal justice system, you could be associated with someone who has committed a crime, and then they want to get you with conspiracy. They connect all these dots to everybody so that they can get as many people as they can. And so now you look at this, the police officers stopped him, the police officers called the paramedics, the police officers were culpable to me in the death of Elijah McClain. And it's just another way when we see the system of law enforcement when it comes to Black bodies, how it doesn't play out or doesn't work in a way that's just for Black people.
As I was reading this, I was reminded of this disease that was made up way back in the day in 1851. It was called drapetomania. Drapetomania was a disease that was supposed to be, that they wanted to classify it as a mental illness. And it was attributed to Black people, African people who were enslaved. The idea that they would flee from captivity, the notion for them to think up in their minds that they want to flee captivity, then they must be mentally ill. And we're going to call that mental illness drapetomania. How dare they think that it is sane, that it is that they are of sound mind if they decide to flee captivity. It must be something wrong with this Black body. It must be something wrong with this African body for them to think that it is okay for them to flee captivity. So this automatic reflex that we have to protect ourselves, to escape harm, this is now deemed a mental illness in 1851, and they call it drapetomania. And I could not help but think about that in the case of Elijah McClain, because how dare he think that it's okay for him to protest the abuse of his body when he's just walking home? It must be something wrong with this Black man not to allow these police officers to treat them any way they want to. Calling you live on the air, KBF at 8.3. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, peace and love to all. This is Brother Sawubona. Now, we know we are in an insane system, especially if you're in this territory. The devil's job is to kill, steal, and destroy. But I just wanted to call with a suggestion that we learned from Brother Toney Orr, and it's the F. Don't fuss, don't fight, and don't flee. I repeat that again. And he called it the 3 F's when you're dealing with the system of white supremacy racism. And they're soldiers. They're soldiers we call the cops, the pigs, the police, whatever you want to call them. The suggestion is do not fuss, do not fight, and do not flee. Again, peace and love to all. Solar Beam out.
I don't think that Solar Beam's suggestions to us from Neely Fuller about the 3 F's work, because it doesn't matter. For Black bodies, you don't have to do anything. Elijah McClain is just walking home. That's all he's doing. As the cops begin to touch his body involuntarily begins to tense up, because that's what happens when you don't know what's going on. You don't know why people are touching you. You don't know why you're being stopped. You don't know what the problem is. Nobody is explaining anything to you. Your body responds automatically. So to give Black people instructions on how to stay alive, I think is insulting, because we should not have to do that, right? You should be able to recognize that here you are encountering not a Black person, but you are encountering a human who just so happens to be one of darker, that has a darker pigment to his skin tone, not because he is Black, but because you have labeled him Black, because race is a construct. It's something that we've made up. So here we have this human who is walking down the street, and as a result of the harm that's being caused to his body responds involuntarily. And so I'm not going to blame him for being killed at the hands of the police officers. You look like you want to say something. And so I want to make sure that I say that. So I was talking about drapetomania, because drapetomania is a made up disease that happened in 1851. And so here you are, when you begin to read the case of Elijah McClain, you have people talking about this disease, I'm putting in quotation marks. I know those of you on the radio can't see me using quotation marks. This disease of excited delirium. That's what they're calling it, excited delirium. So because of what is happening to his body, and this is not just the case with Elijah Muhammad, but there have been several people that they have decided to use this, they have attributed this excited delirium too. Here's a couple of names. It has happened in the case of Manuel Ellis, Zachary Bear Hills, Elijah McClain, Natasha McKenna, and Daniel Prude. It even was brought up in the case of Mr. George Floyd, where you have people's bodies who begin to respond as a result of the trauma that the body is experiencing at the hands of law enforcement. So they've come up with this name and they call it excited delirium, and they're using that as the reason why the paramedics will now inject them with the ketamine, because they want to calm the body down, because the body has gotten so excitable that it is now out of control, and so we have to control this body, so we're going to inject it with this ketamine. And so we've got this entire white paper that came out in 2009, white paper where people decided, oh, we're going to use some experts so that they can prove to us that this is something, that this excited delirium is actually something that we need to deal with. But the fact of the matter is that the Medical Association, the Psychiatric Association, neither one of them has agreed that excited delirium is an actual condition that a person can have. You cannot, there are no signs for it except the ones that they made up in this paper. There's no way to track it. There's no way to identify it in the body. There's no way to test for it. There's no way to identify it as a bona fide, as a legal condition that a person can have. And so if it's not something that a person can have, then how is it that you can justify the killing of this man by saying he was in need of ketamine because he was exhibiting excited delirium when it really is no such thing? And so again, it takes me back to Drapetomania, where we make up these conditions so that we can justify reasons why we handle Black bodies in the way that we do. And then we get all of the systems to come into play with them. The healthcare system, we've got the criminal and justice system, we've got the government system, we've got all of these systems saying, yes, this is why we do what we do, because it's the only way that we can figure out how to manage, how to control the Black, the African body. Caller, you're live on the air, KBF 88.3. Thanks for calling.
You're welcome. Good morning, Sister Denise.
Good morning, Ezekiel.
Good morning to the audience, to the listeners and on the way. Let me just say this. And it's not just what your response to something is, but it's in actuality, it's not something to try to stop. And if the 3F kept to get over the top, and there's been a lot of 3F, you've been lots of ways to avoid getting that. So lots of companies have preached to their children when they leave out the house how to react, what to do, what not to do, because we want to see you get back into the class. I love you, son. I love your nephew. Come on back home. Don't do this. Don't do that. It's just out. Do this, do that. And they try with desperation to come up with different ways and means to make it, if you will. And for that reason, I just want to say that the 3Fs are just as important as any other means to survive. And I don't think it's insulting to enforce these different means because it's just not a survival, and it's just desperate, I feel, that we need to do things to our kids back home, to get our loved ones back around us, even though we shouldn't have to, which is what you see. No, we shouldn't have. But we do need to employ different means and methods of survival. It's just a survival technique. And that's all. And I don't want to say it's insulting because I can remember telling my nephews, my sons, their friends, we love y'all. Why don't y'all get no trouble y'all get out there? Do this, do that. Don't, and he's right. Don't flee, don't fight, don't fight. Whatever you can do to maintain control over the situation, if you can't influence telling folks about what's going on, and we need for folks to remind us of that to do the things that we can do to get our children back home, to get our loved ones back to home when they go out and go out amongst these police or whatever, these authorities who have in mind that we have different conditions that require them to use these different medications and these different methods. They practice them. They used to practice as folks and kids. They started out. It just, I know it's difficult to think that you have to do something to survive, but that's just how important it is. So, you know, I would encourage people to use whatever means they can to cope. And that's what I'm saying. Thanks so much. Y'all have a good rest of the day and keep up good.
I think the issue is this. If those 3 F's worked, I can understand. I can understand you doing this, but they don't work. And Denise, you said it a second ago, they don't work. When you are looked upon as a threat, think about it. They say he looks suspicious. So automatically, it does not matter. He didn't have to fight. He didn't have to fuss. He didn't have to flee. He could have just been, Elijah McClain could have just been standing there. But because he's perceived as suspicious, he's perceived as a threat, that means that there's this mindset that this is a dangerous individual and we have to treat him as a dangerous individual. And that's what happens to Black people. As we are going about our daily lives, all it takes is that interaction, because once you are approached by law enforcement, they're approaching you with an anxiety. They're approaching you with a mindset that, you know, this Black person may be out of control, that this Black person may be a threat, or is a threat. And so because of that, we have to treat them as such.
And Phyllis Brown agrees. She says the 3 F's don't work. What I find insulting is that we always, in this country, I think we do it often, where we victimize the victim. And so for you to say that we need to we've got to give our children the talk, which we do. We got to tell them about the 3 F's. We got to encourage our young men, according to what Ezekiel said, hey, be careful out there. We've got to do all of this because you as the target, you're targeted because of your skin tone. You are targeted because of your Blackness. You are targeted because of your connection to the African diaspora. You are targeted. So you as the target need to figure out how to stay alive. That's what's insulting to me. Instead of us raising up and saying, no, the system is who we should target. All of us should target a system that says that it is okay for you to target this, for you to kill this Black body, for you to dehumanize this African body. That's what I find to be insulting, that we are all, because Philando Castile, he's probably the best example that I can think of a man sitting in his car, already stopped, complying with everything that the officer says. He has his girlfriend in the passenger seat and the girlfriend's baby, who he claims as his own. So this is his own child in the back seat, and the officer did not think twice to shoot into that car and to kill him for compliance. Where were the 3 F's then? How did the 3 F's help him? So that's the part that I think that we need to make sure that we say loudly and clearly, because we need people to understand that we are targeted simply because of the amount of melanin in our bodies, and the systems that are in place work together to desecrate those bodies. Here's Triana. So Triana says, I wouldn't say the 3 F's do not work. I would say, like any rule, there are exceptions. In this situation, the 3 F's would not apply because he implemented them, but as Dr. Denise stated, his body's response was a natural one. Let me say that again. Triana says, I wouldn't say the 3 F's do not work. I would say, like any rule, there are exceptions. In this situation, the 3Fs would not apply because he implemented them. But as Dr. Denise stated, his body's response was a natural one. They kept saying, stop tensing up, don't tense up, don't tense up. And he's saying, look, I'm just trying to go home. Not once did they say, oh, they said he was looking suspicious. I think that's the reason that they gave. We're here because you look suspicious. What's suspicious about a Black man walking home? So really the conversation then, again, it's not about teaching the Black person how to comply. It's about teaching white people about their complicity in these systems. Because somebody called and said, there's a Black man walking down here that I find suspicious. And immediately the cops, the police, the law enforcement, the system of law enforcement says, oh my goodness, let me go protect this white body from the Black man. That there is a level of complicity in that with that white people, I don't think, the system of whiteness especially really understands. What was her name? Oh my goodness, going back to the woman, Amy Cooper.
Yeah, in New York.
In New York, because they were in Central Park, right? And he was the Black man, Christian Cooper. They are not related. Christian Cooper was a bird watcher, and he's there. And all he asks her to do is put a leash on her dog, which is the rule that is posted in the park. And she says, I'm going to call the police and tell them you are harassing me, because she knows how the systems work. She understands how the Black body is perceived. She knows that that the systems are designed to work in her favor to protect her at all costs. And so when she makes that call, she understands that it is possible that you're going to die. And I'm okay with that as long as you leave me alone. And that to me is the conversation that we should have, rather than focus our conversation on what Black bodies should do to stay alive.
Yeah, and all we have to do is just look here in Little Rock. You know, I know what's sort of being called Arkansas,
I believe he said that.
The Ark of Safety. But when I drive through the Heights, when I drive through certain areas of Chenal, you know, whether it's day or whether it's night, I know I can't, you know, I have to make sure that my GPS, my navigation is taking me to the house that I'm going to, or to the place I'm going to. Because if I'm driving around looking, you know how you get lost, you can't make sure, you can't find the exact house, and you're going slow. I know that if I do that, there's a great possibility that eventually a police officer is going to show up, a neighborhood watch person is going to show up. What are you doing? Why are you here? And even though I said, I'm looking for this address, it's not going to matter. Why are you looking for this address? It can go bad very quickly, because part of the system says that you're not supposed to be here. If you are here, that means that you are doing some type of illegal activity. You're here to harm me. You're here to do something to me or to my neighborhood. Because remember, the police on the side of their cars to serve and protect. It's not to serve and protect Black and brown people. It's to serve and protect the majority white people.
I remember when I was in Conway and was working as I was doing some case management, and I had to hand deliver a check to a landlord. And I was following the GPS, and I ended up in this neighborhood. And I remember being on the phone talking to a friend. And I remember saying to that friend, hey, I need you to stay on this phone while I walk to this door, because I'm not sure what's going to happen. I don't know where I am. I'm following the GPS. I can tell already from the neighborhood that I am one that they do not expect to see. And I'm about to walk to this door. I've got to ring this doorbell. I'm already trying to figure out, how do I ring the doorbell and step aside just in case they want to shoot out the front door just because they see my Black body. I'm already trying to step back as far as I I can so that they will know that I'm not trying to get into their house. I'm doing all of this while the person is on the phone, sitting on ready to make sure that they can send the cops to me. And I'm like, wait a minute, I need to send you my PIN so you'll know my location. Like all of this just because I needed to drop off a check. That's all I needed to do was drop off a check. And so when they say to Elijah McClain, don't tense up, how can you help? How can you keep from tensing up when all of this is running through your mind? That all I'm trying to do is do my job. All I'm trying to do is drop off a check. All I'm trying to do is take care of my client. All I'm trying to do is be the best person that I can be in this position that I have on this job so that I can make sure that I fulfill all the requirements that my employer has. But all of this is in my mind, trying to make sure that I stay alive. And you tell me, don't tense up. It's a ridiculous notion for you to think that my body is not going to tense up. And so Elijah McClain is being accosted for his body having a natural response, which goes back to something that you said, Toney. How do you even see me? You can't see me as human if you don't understand that the fact that you are touching my body without my permission, without me knowing what's going on, that my body is going to automatically respond. Any human body would do that. So for you to tell me not to tense up, then you must not see me as human. And that's the conversation that we have to continue to have, because as long as we are being perceived as less than human, then these conversations continue to be important and imperative and crucial. And so Bob Marley says, all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. Can we stop fighting? Like, why is it a fight for me to walk down the street? Why is it a fight for me to show up at your house? Why is it a fight for me to be walking in your neighborhood? Why is it a fight for me to go to the grocery store? Why is it a fight for me to be at my own church having Bible study? Why are we fighting about being human? I don't understand, and I wish somebody would help me.
I don't understand it either. Even if you look at the history in so many different ways. You look at, I was watching something before I came on the show, and it was something about Elon Musk. He said something that they took as anti-Semitic. So when I see you as a Jewish body, then, or a Jewish race, or however you want to look at it.
Jewish is not a race.
Okay. But when I look at the body of a Jewish person, well, just ethnic group, and you will say, okay, we don't want that body harmed, or you can't say nothing against that body, but when you look at someone who is Native American, or you look at someone who's Black, is that we don't care about harming that body. We don't care about talking about that body. We don't care about desecrating that body, because that body is less valuable than this body. And I think that's where part of the conversation has to be, is how do you value and how do you look at the value of these bodies? Today, in the racial tidbit for the day, or I know Denise read the 25th, but the 26th, Abraham Lincoln ordered the execution of 38 North Dakota indigenous people. And it made me think about in this conversation how when you look at, when the system looks at Native Americans or indigenous people, they look at them as like they're less value. It used to be like only good Indian is a dead Indian. It's the same thing as you said, the only good Negro is a dead Negro, because there's no value in that. But if you look at a white body or you look at a Jewish body, you say there's the value right there. And because we value, we can't let nobody or let anything devalue them. But it does not matter about Black and brown bodies.
I think that's interesting, because for a person who is Jewish, I don't think that you can look at a person and say, oh, I believe that person is Jewish. I don't think that there's any kind of distinguishing characteristic that says, oh, look at me, I'm Jewish. Now, I know that there are some names, some last names that kind of signal to you that this person might be Jewish. I do know that. And I do know that there are some cities in our country that have a concentrated population of Jewish people. So if you see someone in that area, that might be a signal to you that this person is Jewish. But I don't believe that you can just look at a Jewish body and say, oh, this person is Jewish. However, when you look at me, there's nothing that keeps you from saying, oh, that's a Black body. Even if I'm from the Caribbean, even if I speak French, even if I'm fluent in Spanish, it does not matter. The amount of melanin in my body automatically signals to you. And so when you talk about the people that are raising up against anti-Semitism, where you think that they're making these statements, you can't say, oh, you're talking about this person. Because unless the person identifies as Jewish, you wouldn't know who they're talking about. But when you talk about Black bodies, you know exactly who it is. You know exactly who the target is. And that to me is what makes this even more egregious. Because when you say that I'm fighting against anti-Semitism, you're still saying I'm fighting to protect the white body. Because that's how we recognize, that's how we assume the bodies of Jewish people look. It's pale, it's white, it's the system of whiteness that we need to protect. But these other bodies with all this melanin, no, we don't have to protect them. That's what happens to Elijah McClain. And so they want to argue and say that he was exhibiting excited delirium. But I want to make sure that I read this. Excited delirium is not a valid, independent medical or psychiatric diagnosis. There is no clear or consistent definition, and there's no way to talk about how it functions, and there's no way to talk about what causes this. This is not an acceptable condition, be it physical or mental, in any of the medically established books, medically established practices that we revere as being those that inform us as to how we handle bodies and how we diagnose what's happening in those bodies. Excited delirium is not a valid, independent medical or psychiatric diagnosis. And so what these people have done, the people that wrote this white paper, what they've done is they've created this condition. And if you do the homework, they've created the condition so that they can justify what happens with the law enforcement officers. So they can say, oh, no, it's not because they put him in the chokehold. It's not because they had his knee on his neck. It's not because they had his knee in his back and caused them to lose. That's not what happened. Excited delirium is what happened, and therefore they were justified. Therefore, the death is justified because the person should not have been exhibiting this aggression because of what was happening to their body. And again, it's ridiculous on its face for you to say, you've got your knee on my neck, you've got your knee in my back, you've got me in a chokehold, but my body should remain calm.
To me, the chokehold is no more than another way, because especially with law enforcement, there was a time when law enforcement handed over on the regular Black bodies to be hung, to be hanged or lynched by white mobs. So law enforcement can't, they can, but they can't drive around with a rope in their car just to hang you up on lynch you up on a tree. But the next closest thing is that chokehold, which does the same thing. It puts a noose around your neck with an arm, and it lynches you.
And I remember, I think I've said this before as I was working on my doctorate. One of the things that I had to do as I was writing my dissertation was to prove or disprove a hypothesis that I had created about my topic and the title of my paper. And one of the things that I learned is that I can make the numbers that I was using either to prove or disprove my hypothesis, I could make the numbers say whatever I wanted them to say. And so once I learned that I had that power as the one who was conducting the study, now when somebody gives me a study, what I want to know is who commissioned the study. I want to know what the relationship is between the person who commissioned the study and the one who's going to receive the results of the study. And I want to know which bodies were used as subjects to help them test test the hypothesis. I'll need to know all of that before I will give credence to whatever the study is. And so as I was looking into this case about Elijah McClain, one of the studies that talks about excited delirium that wants to support the notion that Elijah McClain was suffering from it, and therefore that's why the paramedics were found guilty, because they injected him with the ketamine to help him calm down because of this excited delirium. Well, the white paper was written by the taser, the people who make the tasers, right? And so the people who make the tasers, they started giving out they were giving out this white paper. When I say white paper, it's a paper that people have written like a dissertation. So it's a paper that people have written to prove that to prove their case about what it is that the argument they are trying to support. So they started giving out this paper free to law enforcement agencies and other people who are connected to the law enforcement agency, so that they could say, yes, this is the reason why we need you to use the ketamine. So it's all working together. The ketamine from the health department, the taser from the law enforcement, the taser from the people who are consulting the law enforcement agencies, the law enforcement agencies who are training their people that when you see this behavior, we're going to call it excited delirium. Now you have the reason to inject this medicine. All of this is working together so that we can continue to perpetuate harm against the Black body. Now, let me be clear. Black bodies are not the only bodies that are being harmed by law enforcement agencies. Black bodies are not the only bodies that are being viewed as demonstrating excited delirium. I am not suggesting that at all. But the bodies that are disproportionately affected by it are Black. And so that's the conversation that we always have to have. If a person who is a part of the system of whiteness, who says that the world has told you are white, if you say, no, this happens in my neighborhood, I'm not going to argue with you. All I'm going to say is, if it's happening in your neighborhood at this rate, imagine the rate it is happening in my neighborhood, because it's always disproportionate as it relates to Black bodies. And that's the conversation, again, that we have to continue to have. Not the conversation about how do we keep targets from being targeted, but how do we eradicate the systems that put targets on the backs of Black folks? How do we do that? That becomes the critical question that we have to answer. And Bob Marley is asking us, like, when are we gonna get to the point where we stop hating, where we stop dealing with all this blood in the street, where we stop going to war? When are we going to get to that point? What would it take for us to live in a world that is peaceful?
That's the question. And I think the one thing that has to happen, the system has to change, and people of all areas and all groups have to recognize that the system is being used in a way that is detrimental to people of color, that is used in a way to target and used in a way to devalue. And all parties, all humans have to understand that.
Right. I think that one of the things that we've done a poor job of doing when we talk about racism is we focus so much on the impact that it has had on Black bodies. We focus so much on the continual impact that it has on Black bodies. It almost leaves white people, or the system of whiteness, to think that it doesn't affect them, that racism is not about them, that those poor Black people, I want to become an ally to Black folks. I want to figure out how I can be progressive in my thinking so that I can support Black folks. But racism affects us all. Every single one of us in this world, whether the world identifies you as white or Black or brown or Asian or Pacific Islander, however the world has identified you with this made up label of race, racism affects us all. And I think until we really get that ingrained way down deep in our souls, until we really feel that on a cellular level, it's hard for people to fight against the system, because many times people don't want to fight against something that they don't think affects them. I'll fight against it if it's mine, right? Like if it's my children you messing with, oh, I'm ready to fight. Oh, if it's my pastor you talking about, oh, I'm ready to fight. But when it's somebody else's situation, until it comes home, it's like, well, you know, they don't really have anything to do with me, and we don't find ourselves stepping up. And so we have to get to the point where we realize, as the Sawubona, as we live into the Sawubona that says racism is killing all of us, every single one of us. And now what are we going to do about it? That becomes the critical question. But really, I think we know the answer. I think we have all the answers that we need. To me, the question is, are you willing to do something about it? Like these laws that are on the book, they were written. Somebody just took a pen and wrote them in the book. So somebody could take a pen and rewrite them. Like, it's really simple. Like these policies that we have in place, we can just throw them out. It's really a simple fix. The question is, why don't you want to fix it? And the reason you don't want to fix it, one of the reasons you don't want to fix it is because when we talk about Black people who are killed at the hands of law enforcement, the first response that we get from the law enforcement agent is that they were scared. They feared for their lives. So there's this ongoing narrative as it relates to between Black and white people, that white people are afraid that if Black people ever get any measure of control over their bodies, they are going to turn around and do the same thing that we are going to turn around and do the same thing to them that was done to us. And that fear is so raw in them that when they stumble upon a Black man walking down the street, when they stumble upon a Black person that's after dark, when they stumble upon a Black person in the elevator, their own anxiety begins to rise because they're like, oh my goodness, what is this person going to do with me? Because you are living with the guilt of the blood that's on your hands. And so that is something that the system of whiteness is going to have to deal with, because as far as I'm concerned as a Black person, I ain't trying to do nothing to you. I just want you to leave me alone. That's how I feel. You waiting to kill some white person? Is that what you waiting on?
No.
I mean, that ain't what I'm waiting on. And so until we begin to wrestle with what's happening in our bodies, until we begin to wrestle with how we really feel about each other way down deep, until we can name our own biases, until we can name our own fears, until we can have authentic, vulnerable, transparent conversations with ourselves, with our families, and then across whatever the line of difference is, whether it is race, whether it is sexual orientation, whether it is gender identity, whether it is political association, whether it is denomination, whatever the line, until we are able to stand in the mirror and look at our ugly selves and say, oh my goodness, look how ugly I am, and know that there is a way of escape, there is a way that I can fix this. Until we are willing to have those conversations, I don't see how the world is going to get any more peaceful.
And you're right. Those conversations need to happen. Because one thing that needs to take place is this sense of guilt. I think there are a lot of white people who have this guilt complex that, going back to something you said, that if Black people become in charge, they're going to do to us what we did to them. And that's the guilt, that's the fear. And it's hard to get rid of that. It's like if you treat a dog bad enough, that if you treat a dog bad, that one day and that dog bites you, you know, the first thing you want to do is get rid of the dog. But it goes back to that idea that I've been treating this dog bad and this dog is going to bite back, fight back. And so we've treated Black people so bad that they're going to fight back. And they're going to bite us, and they're going to get rid of us.
Did you just liken us to dogs? I'm like, wait, what?
I just used the analogy of how people who own dogs. I did not say that Black people were like dogs.
So I think that this is the same conversation that some people are having as it relates to what's happening between Israel and Palestine, where you think that you can treat a person or a group of people however you want to treat them, for as long as you want to treat them, and the people are going to simply allow the atrocities to continue to happen. And once you dare to raise up, then oh my goodness, now you are showing excited delirium, and we have to have this conversation about. Again, living into the Sawubona that says, when I look at you, I do not see some person that I hate. I do not see some person that is so different from me that I will not make room for them in this world. I do not see a person that makes me feel guilty. I do not see a person that makes me feel superior. I do not see a person that I can deem inferior. What I see is a human. And when I think about the lives of humans, I think that it is important for us to figure out how we are going to coexist. How do I allow you to be your whole, true, free, and liberated self as I am being my whole, true, free, and liberated self? How is it that we can make that happen? And so here's Phyllis Brown pushing back on me using the word guilt. There is no guilt. Do you think white people feel guilty about slavery? No, they continue to benefit. Do you think white people feel guilty about slavery? No, they continue to benefit. And that reminds me of what's his name? Tom Cotton. It was a necessary evil. I'm listening to the book They Were Her Property. It's about the role of white women in the enslavement of Black bodies, of African bodies. And they call it the peculiar institution. They don't want to call it slavery. They don't want to talk about enslaved. They call it the peculiar institution. They want to talk about it being a necessary evil. Do you think they feel guilty? That's the question that Phyllis Brown poses. Now, how are you going to feel guilty and continue to benefit? If you felt guilty, you would say, I want to get the blood off my hands. How do I fix it so that I'm no longer a part of this? How do I make it so that this is not my legacy? How do I break this generational curse? How do I break these chains? That would be the question that you ask, instead of asking, do they feel guilty? I appreciate you pushing back on that. Let's see what happens as a result as we continue this conversation next Tuesday when you are live right here for Community Voices. But right now, your girl Lola has walked into the room, and you know what that means. You've got 2 hours of jazz coming to you, hoping to get way down deep in your body to ask yourself, are you living into the Sawubona that says we are one and we can be at peace? We'll see you next week. You guys are all.
What's up, Lola?